Chapter 68. I walked through the side door, watching the orange sun dip behind the mountains for another day. Inhaling the crisp air through my nose, I glanced up at Marcus's office. I noticed 4 men standing out along the terrace, one smoking, one I didn't know, and the other 2 were Lucas and Philippe. Hard at work, no doubt. Moments later, I glimpsed Marcus strolling out through the glass door with his cell phone pressed against his ear. He spotted me and passed the phone to Lucas, who continued the phone call. Marcus put his hands in his black sweats and walked to the edge of the bluff, watching me at length. A small smile formed across my lips, and I entered my quarters. I was exhausted. I flicked on one of my many Buddha Bar albums and ran a hot bath, lighting the array of candles around the tub, totally setting the mood for some much-needed relaxation before dinner at Dale's. I lay in that hot, oily water, almost nodding off a couple of times, drearily watching the lights flicker on over the glittering valley of Montecito and down towards Santa Barbara, until I suddenly heard the terrible sounds of that helicopter, totally disturbing my zen moment as it slowly left the property. And not long after, I then heard my bedroom door close. Marcus walked into the bathroom. "My lady," he said with a suggestive grin, watching me sensually soak in the bath. "You have exceeded yourself again." "Oh?" I said with a smile, watching him remove his clothes, revealing that stunningly sculpted body, along with that monstrous package of destruction dangling between his legs. I shuddered. I always did when I saw it. He walked around the top of the tub and slipped his big body in behind mine, cradling me in his arms and sitting me on his bulging lap. "You bought me a whole outfit," he murmured, pulling my head back onto his shoulder, holding my neck and forehead within his strong hands gently. His dark, glassy eyes searched my face. "I did," I murmured through the pillowing steam. "I hope you like it." His heavy breath danced over mine. "I love it," he whispered, feeling that bundle of bulge begin to stiffen beneath me. Silently, Marcus dragged his lips over my neck, kissing it gently. Once, twice, 3 times. He was quickly changing the temperature of the bath water, and as a result, my body became hot and bothered. "Your card is in my purse," I spoke quietly, lying back against his strong chest. "I'll get it for you after." "Keep it," he whispered, bringing my face up beside his, feeling that wet tongue run across my lips. My insides began to quiver with excitement, anticipating the punishment they were about to receive. They couldn't mistaken the wrath of Marcos Almeida. Chapter 69. Keeping one hand pressed firmly against the front of my neck, Marcus slipped the other over my oiled breasts, allowing it to explore its carnal desires. He then gradually moved it over my navel until it slipped in between my spreading thighs, his fingers delicately rubbing my wet, sacred lips in slow, circular motions. I moaned, arching my back as he kept my body pinned against his. "I have something for you," he whispered, his lustful, heavy breath licking the inside of my ear, as my eyes became ensconced within the burning flames of the candles. "I bet you do," I smiled, rocking slowly on his stiffening rod of wet flesh. I finally felt the head of his monster slither between my thighs as he pushed it up into my tight, tormented walls of my sexual anguish. I let out a cry, feeling it stretch me beyond measure. One would think I'd have grown used to Marcos's destructive size, but I hadn't. I don't even think it was possible. As the full length of it clamored inside of me, we sat for a moment, acclimatizing, until he twisted me around so that I was now facing him. All achieved without once pulling it out. Those dark eyes of his were glazed over, his eyelids heavy, dripping with rapture, as he massaged his freakishness deep inside of me. "Do you feel it?" he whispered into my ear. "Yes," I murmured, running my wet hands over his head, gently riding that thick shaft. "That's my love for you," he muttered, thrusting his pelvis up against mine. "That's what you do to me." Through my inconsolable moaning, I dropped my head back, feeling Marcus's tongue devour my neck as we rocked together in the warm water, engulfed within a circle of burning flames, imminently lost within the desperate clutches of our heated passion once more. Eventually he lifted me above the water, arching my back into a bridge-like position, almost upside down, with my long black hair dragging through the steaming surface as he forced that monster inside of me. Rare was the man that was blessed with such an inner knowing of how to send a woman mad with pleasure. With his tongue buried deep within my mouth, Marcos thrust his pelvis into me harder and harder, feeling the force of those other worlds beginning to once more rudely invade my sanity, summoning me to the gates of that ultimate Elysium. I cried out through my despairing ecstasy, feeling my body shake uncontrollably until I thought I would burst, trembling within Marcus's strong clutch as he sucked the life right out of me. My devastated sex dribbling with lines of moist sacredness down my thighs, begging for mercy. Sitting me on the edge of the tub, Marcus pulled his swollen rod of angry flesh from my dank walls and held it beside my face, its fat veins throbbing viciously, grazing the side of my cheek as I soothed it with my gentle fingers. I was dying to suck it, lathered in our erotic serenade. I glanced up at Marcus biting my lip. "Taste it, baby." Marcus gasped through his heavy breathing, running the head of it along the rim of my juicy wonton lips. "Taste us." With his thumb on my chin, he slowly pulled my jaw open, and I stuck out my eager tongue, running it under the whole length of that massive shaft, watching Marcos roll his head back in gratification. He loved it. He then slowly forced it into my stretching mouth, feeling it hit the back of my throat, making me gag. And even then, it was barely halfway in. Marcus, with a small amused grin, peered down at me. "Baby," he whispered, giving me his most empathetic yet encouraging eyes. "Come on." I understood. Running his fingers through my wet hair, he grabbed my head and thrust that angry beast deeper into my mouth, those haunting eyes carefully watching mine as the saliva dripped from my retching mouth down over my breasts. Boundaries had to be broken, and through my watering eyes, Marcus was showing me how. I could feel he was on the brink of an eruption as I was taking almost the full length of that wickedness in my mouth. Don't ask me how. Not being able to withstand my tempestuous ways a second longer, he exploded his hot liquid into my mouth, hot as lava, his sacred seed salting my tongue, running down the back of my throat and squeezing out the sides of my mouth, seeping down my chin and over my neck. Chapter 70. We exhaustively slipped back into the tub, lying in each other's arms until our bodies returned back to earth. Wrinkled to a prune, we eventually dragged ourselves out. Do you feel better? Marcus kissed my face, wrapping a towel around me. Yes, I do, I said, combing his black hair. Do you? Marcus raised his eyebrows with a sly smile. So much. How's your jaw? I burst out laughing. It's doing okay. Almost broken, honey. Marcus chuckled to himself. I like your mouth. He squeezed my waist. We must be made for each other. We must be, I smirked. We walked into my bedroom, and there on the bed was a royal blue velvet box. I abruptly stopped in my stride. Oh no, I gasped, feeling his moist torso press up against mine. Open it, he said over my shoulder, pushing me forward with his body. Oh, I'm scared, I murmured, holding my hands to my mouth. Oh, go on. Walking closer, I read the writing on the box. Mikimoto. Shit. Something serious again. He picked up the box and gave it to me. Oh, God, you spoiled me. I sighed deeply, looking at it. Thank you. Marcus smiled. It's my pleasure. I opened it and was met with an immaculate strand of peacock Tahitian pearls, its clasp covered in pave diamonds with earrings to match. It was gorgeously stunning. Oh, Marcus, I gasped, holding my hand to my chest, eclipsed within its magnificent luster. I thought they would look nice with your little black dress, he smiled. Ah, they're perfect. I turned and fell into his strong arms. You are so sweet to me. But I love you, he said, holding my wet face in his hands, glancing at my glassy green eyes. Bonnie, for God's sake, don't cry. I love you, I murmured, pushing that lump back down my throat. We shared a long, tender kiss. I was walking on air. Marcus went and sprawled his burly body across my bed, leisurely watching me put on my face, blow dry my hair, in between intermittently checking his cell phone. Puppy, help me with my dress, would you please? I said, slipping into a tiny black lace G-string, which he adored nonetheless. I think I like you better in this, he said, pulling the black lace between his fingers. That's for later. I winked at him as he zipped me up and then clasped the pearls around my neck. He rubbed his hands over my body from behind, gazing at me in the mirror. Ah, you're exquisitely stunning, he murmured, taking my hand and kissing it gently. Ah, the gentleman. Thank you, I whispered, tightening the towel around his waist. Now, let's get you dressed. I have to admit, it was weird going up into Marcus's bedroom without April being in there. But Marcus didn't seem to care. Nothing ever fazed him. You are to die for, I muttered, fixing the buttons on his vest. looking sharper than a blade. What a babe. I like it, he said, fixing his new gold cufflinks in the mirror. He turned to me. Are you ready? He asked, taking my hand. I'm ready, I smiled. Stepping out into the fresh night air, I watched Marcus drive his Bentley to the front entrance. He even got out and opened the door for me. So, where are we going? He asked. Simolinda Lane. Chapter 71. Oh, darling, Dale cried, opening the front door. She was looking more fabulous than ever, wearing a mint green jersey dress that draped loosely down to her ankles, matching those classic red lips, and decorated with a pair of precious-looking black opal earrings. Hello, Dale, I said, embracing her, kissing both of her soft cheeks and wafting in that signature rose perfume of hers. Oh, Marcos, lovely to see you again, darling, she smiled as Marcus kissed both of her cheeks. Like, forget the air kissing that people do in this town. Colombian men kissed on the cheeks. Their kisses were real. At least Marcus's were. And Dale quickly took note of it. Ah, Dale, it is my pleasure. He grinned, flashing her those disarming dimples and passing her a bottle of Cristal. Dom Perignon. Thank you for the invite. Oh, please, do come in. Her two great big German shepherds were barking like mad at us, ready to take off our heads. They scared the hell out of me. Oh, don't mind them, she laughed, putting them back inside the house with her leg. They're all bark. I hope so, I muttered, hiding behind Marcus, walking inside. I don't have much on under this dress. Walking into Dale Franks' house was magic. It was a beautiful Mediterranean-style villa with wide, arching windows that opened up onto lush garden beds. There was also a very inviting pool with towering palms overlooking the glittering panorama of Santa Barbara. It was breathtaking. Now, can I offer you two a drink? She asked as we followed her into the living room, becoming swept up in the sounds of bossa nova filling the air. Some Veuve, Bonnie. Thank you. A Veuve would be great. And you, Marcos? She said. Wine? Liquor? Actually, I have Macallan, or Ron Medellin, if you fancy. Wow, Marcos muttered, appearing impressed. In that case, you leave me no choice but to go with Medellin. What is it? I asked. Colombian rum, he said, rubbing his hand over my back affectionately. Dale certainly knew how to entertain. What can I say? She was the ultimate hostess. She walked over with our drinks and we raised our glasses. Welcome, welcome, she smiled, clanking her glass with ours. Please, she gestured us toward a circular dining table, giving way to sweeping views of the dark Santa Barbara night. Come and sit. Oh, you have a lovely home, Dale, remarked Marcos, sitting down. The art is spectacular. Oh, thank you, she smiled. My late husband and I have collected many wonderful pieces over the years. Yes, it shows. Suddenly I heard Marcus's phone buzzing in his trouser pocket. I sighed reluctantly. It was relentless. I felt sorry for him. I watched him take one glance at the screen and then put it back. Oh, God. We had barely sat down, and it was already blowing up. I suspected it was April. The bitch had nothing better to do up in Boise, I dare say. After a few drinks, we smiled as the chef brought out our entree. Ahi tuna tartare, garnished with micro shiso. Sensational. So, how is it having someone like Bonnie work for you, Marcos? Dale asked candidly. Most of the time she's a pain in the ass. he replied with a straight face, his dark eyes dancing through the candlelight. But I deal with it. Dale and I burst out laughing. He eventually joined in. You are so bad, I muttered scornfully, flinging him with my napkin. Come here. He laughed with pleading eyes, clutching my neck, pressing his lips onto mine. He glanced at Dale. Dale, I profess to you that I am in love with this beautiful woman. Dale could barely wipe the smile from her face. It certainly shows, she said, carefully picking through her plate with a fork. As usual, Marcus's cell phone killed the moment. I was ready to throw it off the bluff. It buzzed like a nagging old wench in his pocket, again and again. I knew he wanted to put it on silent, but important business matters were always vying for his attention. Life of a billionaire, I had to continually remind myself. He peered down at the screen and reluctantly sighed. Excuse me. He got up from the table and walked outside. With her curious face aglow, Dale glanced at me, gently lowering her fork. Darling, I'm afraid I have to retract the words I told you at Pane e Vino, she said, turning to Marcus's dark silhouette. The man adores you. My heart swelled, watching him pace back and forth out by the pool, with Dale's dogs excitedly sniffing at his ankles. The feeling is absolutely mutual. This isn't some kind of lust thing. Oh, I see it now, darling, she said. I mean, you've really hit the jackpot with this one. She glanced over her shoulder again. I wish my Jeff could have spent time with him. Believe me, Dale, I said, putting the fork to my mouth. I'm pinching myself every day. Christ, if those tarts about town ever got wind of this, Dale mumbled, shaking her head, there'd be a bounty on your backside, and you'd be the most hated woman in Santa Barbara. Mark my word. Hell, probably America. Oh, God. She sighed sharply, the anxious thought marinating between us. Oh, imagine April. Oh, God, I don't even want to think about that neurotic bitch, I muttered with a lowered voice, holding my head in my hands. I suspect that's her now. She's the only one that calls him like that. After a long 10 minutes, Marcus came back inside, giving us both a small smile. His mood had changed. Oh no. He tried to ice over the agitation riddled on his face, but Dale and I both knew better. I took his hand and squeezed it softly, my empathetic eyes falling over him as he ate his entree quietly. Chapter 72. Oh, I have to admit, I'm feeling slightly tipsy, Dale mused, dabbing her mouth with her napkin after finishing a dessert. She held her head in her hands, glancing at me. Darling, you're looking a little rosy in the cheeks also. I was definitely feeling fuzzed. My cheeks were always burning when I consumed any type of alcohol, and it didn't help that the most gorgeous man on the planet was sitting next to me. Yes, I said, massaging Marcus's arm as he glanced at me tenderly. I am definitely feeling it. Me and alcohol don't go well together. Marcus laughed at both of us, sitting back calm and collected. He too had consumed a solid amount, but clearly could handle it better than the two of us put together, or at least looked like he could. That's that Colombian blood for you. How are you feeling, honey? I asked him, just wanting to jump him. I'm fine, he smiled. Takes more than a few drinks to get me strapped up. It was almost 11:30 p.m., and I noticed Dale could barely keep her eyes open. it was time to leave. "Darling, we should be going home now," I said as we stood to our feet. "Thank you for inviting us to dinner at your wonderful home." "Oh, it has been my absolute pleasure, darling," she said, hugging us both as we walked to the front door. "It's been a lovely night. We'll have to do it again sometime soon." Parting with a kiss, Dale watched as Marcus helped me up the stairs in my towering black Louboutins, as they didn't want to be my friend at that hour. He opened my door for me and then started up the Bentley, getting the engine warm. Dale glanced up at me from the front door. "I'll ring you." "All right, darling," I nodded. "Sleep tight." I staggered into the car and Marcus reversed slowly, driving up and out of Dale's property. He glanced at me and took my hand, rubbing it tenderly as he drove along those quiet, dark streets. "Ah, what a nice dinner," I smiled, gazing at his tired face. "Dale is great," he said, looking at me as he turned the car onto Alston Road. His face was troubled. "What's wrong, Poppy?" I asked him with concern. "April called me earlier," he muttered quietly. "She's coming home tomorrow." I felt my stomach churn with disappointment. "Why?" I stammered, glaring at his face for answers. "I don't know." Marcus sighed sharply, shaking his head. "She says she needs to have a meeting with Terry." "A meeting with Terry?" I rolled my eyes, as if that's going to stop the world from turning. Marcus drove on quietly, looking ahead. I suspected April's jealousy was racking her conscience. I wanted to forget that bitch and enjoy the last few hours I had with Marcus without her sniffing down my back. "So, is Oksana dropping Henry home?" I wondered. "Yes, my lady." Marcus kissed my hand assuredly. "They'll be on their way now." As we crawled up the drive, Marcus let me out so he could park the car. I ran up the garden path barefoot to quickly get changed to some sweats before Henry came home. And no more than just 5 minutes later, Oksana arrived at the house with both Henry and Seth clambering through the door happily. "Hey, did you guys have fun?" Marcus asked, putting an arm over Henry's shoulder. "Yeah, it was awesome," Henry laughed, "until Seth started a cake fight in front of Alexa." "Oh, that was you, man," Seth jeered, pointing a stern finger at Henry. "I don't care about Alexa." "Who's Alexa?" Marcus asked curiously. Alexa was a pretty little thing in Henry's class. She was one of those all-rounder type girls. She had the looks, the brains, and the taut, athletic body. A bit of a hit with the boys at Laguna. "Alexa Campbell," Henry muttered. "Seth's girlfriend." "Oh, come on, dude, she's yours," Seth bellowed bashfully. "Uh-huh, I see." Marcus grinned, looking amused. Oksana finally came through the front door with Henry's bags, looking exhausted. "Ah, hey Bonnie, hey Marcos," she smiled, wearing black tights with a black skivvy and black Ugg boots. At least her boobs weren't on display tonight. "Oh, hi Oksana," I said. She appeared slightly taken aback, seeing the two of us together in the house. Marcus still clad in his sharp outfit, and me, still donning my Tahitian pearls, face full of makeup. "Thanks for dropping Henry home, Oksana. Really appreciate it," Marcus said, pouring himself a glass of water. "Oh, you're welcome," Oksana gushed, taking serious note of how smashing he looked. "Oh, it's no trouble." I glared at her, reading her face. She wanted to fuck him. It was as obvious as her big breasts. "Keep dreaming, whore." She glanced at Marcus and I with intrigue, calculating her thoughts, wondering why we were dressed up. And then finally, she had the aha moment. She was hardly subtle about it. That's right, bitch. We went out on a date. Deal with it. I'm tired, Henry bellowed. I'm going to go to bed. Better you did, Marcus said, sipping his glass of water, clutching his son's shoulders. I'll see you tomorrow, Henry said to Seth. Later, dude, Seth replied, rolling out the front door. Happy birthday, honey, I called out after him. Thanks, he muttered, running down the steps. They had a great time, Oksana smiled, brushing her peroxide hair from her face. It was a good turnout. They looked like they had a great time, Marcus answered, walking right up beside me at the kitchen counter. Suddenly, I felt his arm slip around my waist, pulling himself close to me, right in front of Oksana. Oh, fucking God. He did not just do that. My eyes almost fell out of my head. I absolutely died. And so did Oksana. She couldn't move. She was so shocked. Instead, she just stood there, staring at us with fluttering eyes. Trust me, I was just as shocked as she was. I just didn't show it. Marcus was making a bold statement. A damn bold statement. He didn't care anymore. Whore, now you know who bought me my diamonds. She stammered, smiling awkwardly at us. I better take this boy home to bed. Marcus took my hand and together we walked her to the front door. Thanks again, Oksana, he said, more laid back than a deck chair. No problem, she called out. Good night. We watched her climb into her range. She gave us a little wave and drove off as Marcus closed the door. I collapsed back onto the wall. I cannot believe you did that, I hissed, glaring at his bemused face. I'm so shocked. What happens if she tells April? She's a gossiper. She won't, Marcus chuckled, putting his arms around my shoulders. You have the upper hand on her, and even if she did tell April, I don't care. He clutched my face within his strong yet tender hands. I'm tired of hiding you, he murmured, searching my eyes. I'm a man that knows what he wants, and I want you. I love you. I fell into Marcus's chest, closing my eyes. I love you, I whispered. Don't fret, my lady, he reassured me, rubbing the nape of my neck. Puppy's taking care of you. You're with me. I trust you. I sighed deeply, trying to erase the image in my mind of April sneaking into my quarters with a machete. Come on, he whispered. Let's go to bed. We slipped out of the dark house and crawled through the gardens to my quarters. My mind was a mess. Maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it wasn't. Either way, I was unnerved. Oksana and Dale now knew about us. Dale I didn't care about, but Oksana Engelby? I hated her. I liked the secret. I relished the peace in my life. I undressed Marcos, throwing his clothes on the floor as he removed my Tahitian pearls in silence. He ran his big hands over the full length of my body and carried me into bed, pulling the blankets up to our chins, and wound his muscular legs in between mine. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I was gone.